Welcome to Victoria Knits Podcast, and I'm Victoria. And you can find me on Ravelry as Victoria Jean and Instagram as Victoria Jean W if you're looking for me. So last time I said I hadn't done any Christmas knitting. This podcast was originally to keep up with my Christmas knitting. I haven't done any in the last 2 weeks either. I've been knitting things for myself. It's felt really good though. I finished this Spindrift shawl. This is a shawl by Helen Stewart. It's the first Helen Stewart pattern I have used, and I really enjoyed it. The yarn I used is from Gauge Dye Works. It's a shawl striping yarn, so it's self-striped. I'm not sure how I'll wear this shawl. Probably like this. But I really like it, and I really like the colors of it. As you can tell from the intro to this video, our 2 extra cats that we are cat sitting for my daughter, Freddie and Josie, are doing very well. Freddie is going outside now, so that's nice. It's nice for all of us. Josie is still being very shy and has not moved from the basement into the main house. But I'm hoping she will eventually. The other big news is I finished my Stewart cardigan. I'm so glad to have that finished. At some point, your cardigan, if you make the Stewart cardigan, is going to look like a tube where the sleeves are, and then there's going to be one hole, and you're going to wonder where the heck your head is going to go and your body's going to go. But don't panic. For a while, you'll be knitting back and forth, then you'll be knitting in the round, and then you'll go back to knitting back and forth after you bind off some stitches. It's a very different pattern, but like most patterns, if you just really trust it, you should be fine. The SSK yarners had some nice tips about this cardigan, which I thought worked out they were really helpful for me. And let me think, what would I offer for tips on this? Make sure you know how to do a provisional cast on of some sort. Make sure you use yarn that is nothing close to the color of the main yarn you're using for the cardigan. Be really careful when you pick up those stitches from the provisional cast on. There was one that kind of got lost on the end, and the SSK yarner were great enough to mention that. Make sure you know how to do a 3 needle bind off. Probably most people do. I hadn't done very many of them, and I really had to focus on that part. And like I say, trust the pattern. At one point you'll be doing the 3 needle bind off for one sleeve, and then they say now knit all the way across, and when they say knit all the way across, they really mean knit all the way across. Knit all the way across, you're going to do another 3 needle bind off. Another tip the SSK yarners had, which I used and I thought was very helpful, was when you're doing the bind off, depending on what size cardigan you're making, your bind off you're going to bind off a certain amount of stitches, of course. Mine was 54, so it takes 55 stitches to bind that off, right? Well, it was hard for me to do a 3 needle bind off and count up to 54 at the same time and really keep track. So their tip was to take a stitch marker, count where your bind off is supposed to end, make sure you have the proper number of stitches behind that as the pattern tells you, and then you can just comfortably focus on your bind off, and then when you get to your stitch marker, you'll know you're done. And I thought that was really nice too. So the only thing that made me nervous was the sleeves. Other than that, once you get the lace pattern down, you're good to go. After you finish the sleeves and you get down to the body, you have like 4 lace patterns to follow. 3 of them are in a chart together. Well, I couldn't read that in the black and white pattern, so I got back on the computer, looked at the pattern again to make sure where everything was, and then I just wrote out each chart separately on a piece of notebook paper. It's just made it easier for me, because then you're just looking at 2 charts at the most. So you're doing one chart for the left front, another chart for the back, and then the same chart again for the other front. And then all that alters is the charts for the front. The back stays the same. So if you're considering do it, I'd say hang in there and do it. I liked it. The yarn that I used on mine was by Lolodidit, called Bees Have Tongues, and I explained that in my last podcast where I got that. But yeah, I like the cardigan. Would I make it again? Yeah, probably. I probably would. I liked it. I made a medium size, and it fit just about right. Large might have been a little nicer. I did add, since I had leftover yarn, I did add one more section onto the bottom, which added about 2 more inches. And I'm really glad I went ahead and did that. At the end, it was, I kind of felt like, oh, I'm so over it. I'm so over this lace. I just want to be done with it. It gets pretty long at the end, but it's like a big shawl. It gets pretty long at the end too, right? So I managed to get past it, and I'm glad I added those 2 extra inches on. It was definitely worth it. So the other things, let's see. So I did the shawl, and I finished my cardigan, and I finished these Hermione's Everyday Socks that I was working on last time. I had one finished last time, and now they're both done. Really like them. The main yarn is from Cappy at the Yarn and Nine. It's called Blueberry a la Mode. And then the heels, toes, and cuffs, about half of those were yarn that I dyed myself. So it was kind of fun. I did all different ones. I started another sock, and I did a little more yarn dyeing this time too, just a little. It was kind of fun. So I did some more dyeing of some mini skeins. It was fun. I've really been enjoying this. So yeah, I just it's basically a vanilla sock. It's some Regia that I had. Don't ask me the color. I can't interpret it, but it's really pretty. I really like the way it turned out, and I like the way my little dye job worked out for the little accents on it. And I'm really excited about something else. I know this a lot of people are gonna be, well, okay, it doesn't matter, right? I figured out how to do Judy's Magic Cast On with double point needles. Man, that has been beyond me for so long. I really thought at one point that Adrian in Australia was going to teach me how to do that. I will link in the show notes, which are below this podcast. I will link to the video that helped me finally get Judy's Magic Cast on DPNs through my head. And I have been really, really enjoying doing my little toe-ups with that cast on. I did those, and I started another pair of socks. I'm doing some shorties for myself. Check these out. Isn't that pretty? I love this. That main yarn is Sugar Shack by Lolodidit, and the heels, toes, and cuffs are one of the yarns that I dyed myself. It's the one that I did dipping in. So yeah, it's been really nice having that Judy's Magic Cast On figured out. It's just the little things like that sometimes that really can make your week or month or whatever, isn't it? I did want to say, I've been pushing the yarn dyeing, but I want to make sure everybody knows that they need to go to the ChemKnits tutorials or watch Cappy at the Yarn and I, watch her podcasts, because I'm not a professional dyer by, oh my gosh, and by any stretch of the imagination. And I want to make sure everybody has good info on, how much you need to heat your yarn up and all that kind of stuff. And, yarn dyeing has not been, it's not easy. It's not something I'm ever going to do professionally, but it's been fun to dabble in it a little bit. I ordered some more minis from Cappy. Thank you, Cappy. I'm looking forward to fiddling around with them a little bit. I think I might stick to the minis for quite a while. Another thing I wanted to mention this time is I've been watching the podcast I like to watch is the Knitted Towel with Jessamine, and she shared a great tip about Ravelry last time, which I don't know how I missed this. But when you buy a pattern and it goes into your library, your Ravelry library, so you can access it again, she mentioned that if you have knitting books or magazines sitting around, that you can enter those into your library, and it's such an easier way to search for your patterns. I don't know, I was the last one to figure that out or hear that tip, but it took me about 20 minutes. I entered a whole lot of magazines I have and all my knitting books. Ravelry recognized all of them but 2 of the magazines. Now I can't print them from Ravelry because I could be lying and I could be entering all kinds of books that I don't own, so it doesn't allow you to do that. But it really makes it a lot easier than lugging those books around or those magazines and going through them one by one, when you can just sit at your computer or your iPad or whatever and search through your little patterns. I really enjoyed that. It was a great tip, and I really appreciate that from her. I've also been watching another podcast I've been watching is Yarn and Ewe Girl. That's Janine. I believe she is in Texas, and I think Jessamine is in the Seattle area. Pretty sure that's right. I think that's about it for today. I have some more things planned, but you don't really need to hear about them yet. One of them I just barely got started on today. I'm going to finish up those socks. This one, which was just the vanilla sock, I plan on entering in a little knit along by the Happy Knitting podcast is putting on, called Keeping It Vanilla. That cal ends the end of this month, so I've already cast on the second sock successfully with Judy's Magic Cast On. You just can't imagine how thrilled I am to have that finally figured out. I really thought that was just going to be beyond me, but finally sitting down, watching that little video through a few times, and then getting my double points, picking it up, and I had to pause the video. I had to, it took me like 3 times trying to cast on before I finally figured it out, and then I have it written down so that I can look at it without having to bring up the video every time. But success. It's nice to have those little successes. So I will make sure I link that video below in the show notes in case you're interested. It might not work for you, but my point is, don't give up. If you're trying to figure something out, don't give up, because somewhere out there's probably something that will click for you. So I'm gonna end the podcast. I took a few pictures just yesterday of things that are going on around here. It's turned very chilly here again. I wanted to do the podcast outside today, but that's not working. We're rainy and cold again, and there's a fire in the wood stove. So I'm thinking about Lisa in Washington doing the same thing, knitting with the fire in her wood stove. So that's it for this podcast. If you want to know when I put out new episodes, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Other than that, as usual, goodbye from Montana, and everybody have a great couple weeks, and happy knitting.